When the U.S. Supreme Court redefined marriage with its 2015 ruling in the Obergefell case, to many, that marked the end of the battle against so-called same-sex marriage. But as the consequences of that ruling became increasingly clear, there's a growing movement that's pushing back against the left's make-believe world, including the idea that two men can make a marriage. Well, this Friday, the Supreme Court will vote on whether or not to take up the case of Kim Davis. You remember that name from way back, a clerk from the state of Kentucky, who was imprisoned, actually put in jail. She was the first to be persecuted for exercising her religious freedom rights. Well, joining me now to discuss this case is Matt Staver, founder and chairman of Liberty Counsel, which is representing Kim Davis before the Supreme Court, possibly. Matt, welcome back to Washington Watch. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Tony. Good to be with you.
All right, let's start with a quick refresher on Kim's case.
Well, Kim's case began on June 26, 2015, when 5 lawyers, that's the Chief Justice's term for the 5, invented so-called same-sex marriage. He said that they imposed their own opinion, their own will, not a legal judgment, and it has nothing to do with the Constitution. So right after that, Kim Davis was faced with this issue. She decided not to issue any marriage licenses while she asked for a religious accommodation. And in the meantime, while she was waiting for that accommodation response, she was sued by same-sex couples. Then she ultimately went to prison for 6 days. While she was in prison, one of the deputy clerks actually issued a license, but scratched out her name, wrote through the name. The then governor, Beshear, the Democrat, who refused to give an accommodation originally, said that that's okay, the license is valid, even though her name was scratched out. And then she got an accommodation from the new governor, Matt Bevin, in December of 2015 with an executive order. And then the legislature gave her an accommodation, unanimously passing a law in April of 2016. So she got the accommodation she wanted, but the same-sex couple, they got also the license they wanted, but it didn't have her name. So they continued to pursue a vendetta against her, and it's going on for 10 years. They eventually got a jury award for emotional distress damages over hurt feelings. Their feelings were hurt, they said. And so $100,000 was against Kim Davis personally, in her personal capacity. And the judge that threw her in jail for 6 days tacked on attorney's fees for $260,000. So she now faces a personal judgment of $360,000 and counting, even though she got the accommodation she sought. And now the case is before the Supreme Court. So on Friday, November 7th, the justices will convene. We need 4 justices to vote yes to take the case. And obviously we need 5 justices to win. The 2 issues are free exercise of religion should be protecting her. She got the accommodation. She should have gotten it originally when she asked the judge, but he didn't grant it. And then secondly, Obergefell, this 2015 fictitious notion that 2 men can marry, and that's the same as opposite-sex marriage, should be overturned.
Matt, a lot has changed in the last 10 years since the court created this make-believe world of same-sex marriage. I mean, we've seen, the American public has seen the consequences. We were told, just 2 people who love each other, they ought to be able to get married. We've seen how this has brought about the whole transgender issue. This has brought about how our schools have been infiltrated with this and our children indoctrinated. Are we at a tipping point of possibly going back, just like what we saw with Roe v. Wade being overturned?
I think we are, at the root of all what we're seeing right now, girls being overrun by boys in their sports, invaded in their private spaces, people saying that they can have whatever gender they want. That all starts, that's all embedded in the Obergefell opinion. Because if a case involving an objective gender-based relationship, marriage, if gender doesn't matter in a gender-based relationship, then it doesn't matter anywhere. So the actual policy embedded in the Obergefell opinion is what we're now seeing with this LGBTQ transgender issue. But I think polls are showing people are rejecting same-sex marriage. They're rejecting this radicalization in this gender ideology. And just within 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks ago, the Texas Supreme Court voted 9-0 to change the judicial ethics code because of the same-sex marriage issue. They said that judges have a First Amendment right to opt out of issuing same-sex marriages because the First Amendment predates Obergefell and is not overruled by that 5-4 opinion. So I think the momentum is changing, just like we saw with Dobbs overruling Roe v. Wade.
Matt, we just have about a minute left, but isn't this an example of what You know, the truth that is written, inscribed on the hearts of man, that eventually it comes to the surface.
So true. I think what this really shows, as it does with abortion, that the true north is what God designed. He created you and I in his image, male and female. He created in his image. You can't let current political pressure or the certain blowing of the winds change that basic, inalienable value and right. And so I think we have to constantly speak the truth. The truth will ultimately prevail, as it did in the abortion, as it will in the abortion on the individual states, and as it will in this particular case here. Continue to stay the course. Truth will prevail. What was meant for evil, God can turn around for good.
Well, Matt Staver, I want to thank you for being one of those fighters, fighting these things consistently in the courts. You're doing a great job, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. My pleasure.